Hey gang, Jim Masters here. Welcome to the Jim Masters Show, entertainment, lifestyle, celebrity talk show series. Hope things are going well wherever you're watching all around this beautiful globe of ours. I'm your host, and it's always a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for stopping by. We always have great entertainment, great conversations, and amazing interactions with our extraordinary guests who come from around the world. And of course, having you a part of the equation, it just makes it even sweeter. Our show is unique, it's conversational, it's engaging. Even though they're sort of like interviews, we don't just call this an interview show. We go a little deeper, warmer, more conversational in style, sort of like the old school shows. If you've been following along for a long time, you know all of that. If this is your first time here stopping by JMS, thanks for doing that. We hope you'll stop by again and check out all the other episodes we have. We literally have over 900 of them with guests who've come in from all around the world in all different fields of endeavor and levels of success, celebrities galore, and good friends. I work in television and radio professionally and stage and film, so some are friends as well that stop by. We have a new friend who is stopping by the show, and we're so excited to have her here. She's a brilliant author and writer. She's also a pop culture enthusiast. She's the author of several books, but most notably this recent one that is getting such great fanfare, I'll Stop the World. Lauren Thoman is here, coming to us from Nashville, Tennessee, actually in her new home. They just moved there recently. As a matter of fact, during the pandemic, we always whisper that word so it doesn't throw off the YouTube algorithms. They were working on the house. And there's a beautiful bookshelf behind her. You'll see it in just a second. And Astrid is joining her as well. Yes. Who's Astrid? You'll find out in just a second. But thanks for stopping by. So good to have you here. If you want to comment while the show is on, this show gives you the opportunity to interact with us while the show's on. We've got the JMS Lovely Hall chat room. It's a chat room that's open and available while the show is airing. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is where this show is coming from, that is Jim Masters TV, you can just click the subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything. You can comment right now and say hello and interact with one another and with us on the Jim Masters Lovely Hall chat room that we've got there, which I think is so cool. And I see comments coming in already, and thank you for that. We appreciate it. It's so nice to have you here again. Thanks for stopping by. I want to tell you a little bit about the incredible book. Now, look at all these great comments that are coming in from people who have read this fabulous novel. I'm obsessed with this book. This one should go at the top of everyone's must-read list. A brilliant, thought-provoking page turner, a whip-smart mystery that gives off great 80s vibes, a time-bending page turner packed with twists no one will see coming. Lauren Thoman is an exciting new talent not to be missed. And guess what? We have her here on the show, and it's really, really cool coming to us from Nashville as well. I want to let you know, too, we dug this out. She doesn't know we have this shop, and I think it's so cool because she was super excited. And this is a big moment. Her book, you know, of course, Amazon and all the usual places where you get books. You can also find it in Target. So she went into the Target store near her and she saw it on the shelf and she just was bowled over by it. I would be too. I think it's so absolutely cool. There is the book, gang, right there. I love the cover too. We're going to talk about the cover and, you know, everything else that goes with the book, but you're going to want to get this. I know that a lot of you who follow the Jim Masters Show live series, you're very, you know, proactive. So when you see an author come on and you see their book, or there's somebody starring in a movie, or somebody has new music or whatever, you're very proactive and you want to respond right away. So we'll tell you again the ways that you can get this incredible book and other works of Lauren as well. So we're excited to have her here. We're excited to have you here as well. And why don't we dive right in and welcome her to the show, coming to us from Nashville. And there's Astrid. Hey,
Hi.
gang. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
And
I think someone just walked by, so she's not interested in me anymore. She needs
she's
to look
not
out the
interested.
window.
Tell her she's on the Jim Masters Show. This is the big time here, right?
I think the big time is whoever has a treat.
The treat.
No.
Yeah,
all the treats everywhere.
Well, she'll stop by for some more levity, I'm sure. Our viewers love when they see other family members pop on. How are you? How are things in Nashville?
I'm doing well. Things in Nashville are going well for me. There's always a lot going on here. Um,
Yes, it's a hub. It's a hub for
it is.
sure.
It
And
is.
that
Yes.
beautiful bookshelf you've got there, I was mentioning in the introduction that you and your
Yes.
husband, got the household together during the crazy times of the last
Y-
few years, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. We bought it right in March of 2020. So you can imagine that was interesting timing. And so we spent the first year mostly just looking around since we were in our house so much and going, what do we want to change? But this is one of the first things that we did is he built me these shelves because I'd always wanted a library office and finally got
Yes.
a place to put one. So
Oh, so cool. That's so cool. Is that something he likes to do on the side, or is that part of his profession as well?
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's a hobby. He just
Yeah.
really likes to build and create, and
Yeah.
he has all sorts of different hobbies. And so, um, and we always kind of had a lot of bickering on our house about whose book was whose and where each book got lived. And so we just solved
Mm.
that problem by saying, what if we just built a room of shelves and all the books lived in the same room and we just treated it like a library?
Build
And so
it
that's what
and
we
they
do
will
now.
come. And the books have
Yes.
come,
Yes.
including yours. Again, one of many you've written. Congratulations on this. The
Thank you.
fanfare. I was sent a PDF of it. It is fantastic. It is riveting. It does
So
have that 80s vibe. It is really terrific. How did you come up with yes, you can drink to that. You've earned that sip. What inspired you to write the book? Tell us a little bit about the early uh creative juices as they were flowing in the creation of this book, and congratulations on it, Lauren.
Oh, thank you so much. So I'll Stop with the World is in just sort of broad strokes. It's a time travel mystery where a character winds up going back to the 80s and has to solve a murder before it happens. And um, the cast is both teenagers and adults. My main character is a teenager, and I started writing it. And I know Astrid's going to vocally get in on this.
Yeah.
The UPS truck rolled up, of course. Um, so it's the first book I've published is I'll Stop the World. I've written others, but this is very distracting. But this is the first time one of them is going to be published. And so it actually started as a side project. Um,
Did you want to go to the door? Because I can chat and tell them more. I can chat with the audience if you want.
um,
Yeah, go
come
ahead.
here,
Yeah,
come
that's
here,
perfectly fine.
come here. No, we're going to get the other one.
We love seeing the chair. You know how many chairs we have seen of our guests because they've had to get up to answer the door or to go get their Oscar or their guitar.
Oh, yeah.
Who do
Well,
we
I'll just go get my Oscar next.
go
No,
get
this
the
is
Oscar
Fezzik.
next? Oh, who's that?
Fezzik. Fezzik. And he just went to the groomer today. So he is very fancy. Aren't you so pretty? Um,
Cutie, huh?
yeah. Well, the UPS truck rolled away, so I don't think that they have to yell out the window anymore. This is the downfall of having, windows.
Yes, they
And
used to
dogs
knock on
and
the
working
door,
from
wait for you to
home.
come to the door, and now they just leave it on the deck and
Well,
take
even if
off.
they
Yeah.
just drive by, like the dogs have to herald. That's their job, is to herald the mail, and the neighbors and leaves. But
A good
anyway,
inspiration. Maybe you'll write some books that have them in it too. They're probably great
oh yeah.
inspiration.
Now I don't know why I didn't put a dog in this book, but it occurred to me after it was already going to be published. Another author wrote that he always puts his dogs in his book, and I was like, why don't I put my dog? I should always put a dog in a book.
They have
Um, and
personalities for
so,
sure. Yeah.
um, and so, um, but anyway, I started.
You're
I trying
managing
to get
so
back to
many
the.
things around you, right?
Trying to get back to the. I swear
That's
I blocked
life.
this off, but you block something off on the calendar, and the dogs do not
And
care.
it's still.
Um, um, I started writing this book back in 2014, actually, and um, I had written another book that I was mainly focused on, and my agent and I were trying to get that one sold, and I was working on another book that was supposed to be my main project. This started as sort of a side project, and it started because I was thinking, I was so kind of stressed out with the trying to get these other books sold, which didn't sell, but in that I was trying to think what would be just fun. What would I like to write about for fun that's just for me? And I really love time travel, and I've always
Mm.
loved time travel stories, of all stripes. be it in books or movies or TV. And so I was like, well, I'd really like to try a time travel story. And so
You like the Back
I,
to the Future movies?
I do very much. And
We had a friend on the guest here on the show who was a guest who played Mayor Goldie Wilson in the movies Back to the
oh,
Future.
nice.
And yeah, and it's Don Fullilove, the actor, and there he is from the Back to the Future movies. He was a
Well, I
guest
actually
and he said, "You
have
got
a
to have one of these on your set, Jim."
oh
So
yeah, no,
there he
that's
is.
amazing. No,
Yeah.
I actually have a Wilson Easter egg in my book. I have the bridge is named after Goldie Wilson. It's Wilson Bridge.
Yeah.
Um,
How cool is that, huh?
but so I
So you
was
like the
thinking, what do
time
I like?
travel? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was asking myself, what do I like about time travel? What appeals to me that I'd want to play with? And so I was like, well, I like when the characters don't really know what's going on. I like that more philosophical piece of it of, why is this happening? And I don't think that there's a lot. I mean, there are definitely some, there are no new ideas. That's the old saying. There's just like new twists on old
New
ideas.
twists on it,
And
right?
so I was like, I would like to do a story where the why is as much of a question as the what do you do now?
Yeah,
Um,
I love that.
and so where there's no time machine, there's no wormhole, there's no anything like that where you can have a very tangible explanation of why this is happening to the character. So that's also kind of a mystery they're trying to solve, but not in but sort of in the same way that we all, going through asking like, why did this thing happen to me? And now what do I do because it happened to me? And those are questions that everyone deals with, and you don't always get answers to them, but you still have to wrestle with them.
Right.
Um, and so from there, it just sort of took shape as I thought about what would be a good time period to go to and what should he be doing once he gets there. And um, kind of came up with this mystery element. I was watching a lot of mystery, like limited series. So I was watching like Mayor of Easttown and um, uh, all the other ones just fell out of my head. Um, the American version is Grace Point. What's the British version?
Oh, I know what you're
With
talking
David
about. Yeah.
Tennant.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's
Sounds
it's
like you want
Broadchurch.
to,
Broadchurch.
yes. I was gonna say, did you want to
That's
phone a friend or
no. I could have googled it, but I was like, I've watched this show, and um, just all these different which is try to see like how do writers handle these stories where there's something and it's a small town and you're looking into it and all these different elements have to come together just so.
yeah,
And so from there I was like, okay, so I think like there's going to be a mystery and we're trying to solve it, and it's going to involve all these different storylines going on concurrently, and we're going to have to kind of follow each of them. So I sort of had that sort of limited series ensemble format in my head as um and it just sort of like emerged because again it was 2014 when I started this and I didn't finish it till 2021, so it took a lot of different forms over the years, and eventually became what it is.
which is an emotional coming of age story, that 80s nostalgic trip, as you said, and it's a suspenseful murder mystery. But a lot of people are saying it defies categorization and genre, even as it offers that host of surprises and delights for the readers. Tell us a little bit about some of that you wanted to have that mixed into what you offer the readers.
Well, again, I started writing it pretty much just for me on the side, as all the stuff that I was trying to write that sort of did fit a little more solidly into a genre was the stuff that I thought was more marketable. And then ironically, this is the first thing to actually sell, was this thing that fits into multiple categories. And so I didn't really try to fit it into any one box. Um, and the thing with time travel is you can have any type of story. It can be a time travel story. I mean, we have time travel comedies, we have time travel romances, time travel adventures, time travel horror. Like every type of story there is, you can put a time travel twist on it. So for me, I was just thinking, um, what's interesting? What would keep me reading? What would keep me invested in this story? And so for me, I was like, well, um, I love interesting characters. I love um, kind of small town where everyone kind of bumps into everyone else, and you've got this like bumper car effect of things affecting other things that you don't necessarily realize you're interacting with. Um, and I really like the um, that philosophical side to it of characters wrestling with why things happen and what do they do with that and what does that mean for their lives and who are they supposed to be. And so I just kept putting in, kind of like just making a dish with no recipe where you just kind of keep throwing in ingredients that you like and going like, well, I don't know what this is going to be, but it's going to be something I'm going to like. um and it turns out that I really like mashing up different genres together and going, "Oh, I don't normally see this combined with this, but I think they'll go together." And so let's see what happens when I throw those 2 things in a pot. Does it taste good? Oh,
Have you always been a fan of the 80s too? Is that something that has sort of tickled you along the way?
yeah, I think I grew up in the '80s, so I was born in the '80s, and so all of my early pop culture experiences were with '80s, movies and books and TV and that sort of thing, and so a lot of it was just kind of going back to my childhood and the things I loved and the
Yeah.
movies that influenced me, and I think, still a lot of that my taste today is formed by what I watched as a kid. um, and I'm always trying to like kind of stir back up the things I felt when I first experienced some of these types of stories.
I want to mention too a little of the background, which is pretty extraordinary. Raised in the suburbs of Philadelphia, city of brotherly love in Pennsylvania, you then moved just outside Nashville. Got your
Hmm.
degree in music education. Quickly realized that life of a band director was not necessarily for you, though you loved music. Explored
Hmm.
various other fields for a few years. Started working on your first novel when your second child started preschool. Those early manuscripts, like you say, never made it to publication after a few years. Then you decided to try your hand at pop culture writing and combined your
Hmm.
passion for writing with your lifetime love of watching and analyzing movies and television shows. And that it didn't take long for you to become a frequent contributor to a number of prominent online pop culture outlets such as
Hmm.
Parade and Vulture, Pop Sugar, Looper, Collider, and leaving little time for writing books. But then you took a break from that creative writing, focused on freelancing, enjoying the opportunity to get in front of a wider community of readers. And then in between article deadlines, you managed to finish another book, one that you started years before and set aside. I'll Stop the World, which again, people are raving about. Tell us about some of the early background that you have as a writer, creative writer, before you even got into writing books per se. It's cool.
Well, I didn't have much background as a writer. I mean, I wrote in, school for, assignments and I enjoyed it. And I always got really good feedback from my teachers, saying that I was a good writer. But I never really thought about writing my own stories outside of, what I was told to write for school. I was always a reader, was the thing. And so I loved to read, from a very young age. I was always that kid that was up way past their bedtime
Yeah.
in bed with the light on, I didn't have to do the flashlight. I did have a little like clip on reading lamp. But I was routinely up until like the wee hours of the morning reading because I couldn't put my book down. I can't do that
Mm.
anymore now. I fall asleep. But um and so I always loved books and I loved stories just in general. But no, it was not until my youngest was in preschool and I had a little more time on my hands and I could get back to reading some more. Um, and that was like during the height of the Hunger Games craze. And so I finished reading the Hunger Games and I really, really loved it. And there were so many books coming out at that time that were marketed as the next Hunger Games. And I had loved the Hunger Games so much that I was like, well, I want to feel that again. I want to feel that reading high that I got from those books. And so I'd pick up a book and it wouldn't scratch the itch. And I did it again and again. I read several books and I just got really frustrated. And I don't think it was the book's fault. Now I know not to try to chase the high of a book I really loved with another book that's supposed to be just like it, because it inevitably does not go well for the second book. It always pales in comparison. So I'm like, it's doing a disservice to these other books. I need to go back and revisit some of them. Um, but I got really frustrated at the time. And my solution, for some reason, was I'm just going to write my own book, um, because none of these are giving me what I want. And so I'm just going to write a story that kind of gives me the feeling I'm looking for. And um, the first thing I tried to write was, I don't think I got more than like 5 pages in. It was not great. And I think I learned very, very quickly, oh, you can't just like decide you're going to write the next Hunger Games and then write the next Hunger Games. Like, it's not that easy. But I did. So that was the first time it occurred to me to kind of try my hand at it. And I discovered I really liked it. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I wound up writing a whole book. It was a fantasy novel, having absolutely no idea what I was doing other than I was having a lot of fun with it because I had read fantasy and I was like, I've read it, I can write it. And I didn't know, and that's kind of my approach to freelancing too. I did not realize that most people start like they aim low when they first try to get into like freelance writing. So I just started pitching all the outlets I liked to read, and I was like, worst they can say is no, in which case I'm not writing for Vulture, and I was never writing for Vulture, so what does it matter? And so I think Vulture was actually one of the first places I placed something, and everyone said, how did you do that? And I said, I did not know I was not supposed to. And that was kind of the same thing with writing a book, is I didn't know that I probably should have put any sort of thought into this. I just did it, and it wasn't good, but it gave me a taste of what it felt like to create my own stories, and then I just kind of couldn't stop from there.
And you, again, a child of television, loving pop culture as well. So those things you sort of pull from
Mhm.
that background as well, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was never a time in my life when I didn't love movies and didn't love watching TV and wasn't constantly walking around with a book in my hand. Like, I was just taking in stories, like breathing all my life. So, and I always love to talk about them and talk about them in a way that I realized not everyone around me did, because a lot of times people just wanted to talk about like, I liked it or I didn't like it. And and sometimes even get into like why I liked it or why I didn't like it. But I was like, okay, what did you think about this choice? Or what about this character story? What do you think was happening behind the scenes? And um event and realized over time that some people get really into talking about like the world of the story and the creative process and what the story is trying to say. And other people are just not interested in having those conversations. And um for me, I always loved so I always was reading the analyses of like movies and TV, and it's that once online entertainment websites were a thing, and I could be reading recaps and commentaries and in the comments and analyses of what did this mean? Here's all the symbolism in this, and that was my candy. I loved that stuff.
Mm.
Um, and so it just was a matter of then like flipping it around going, oh, did you know you can actually create your own thing and you can put all the things in there? And yeah, so it all kind of comes from the same place, I think.
And then you were talking about, I love the cover. Tell us about the design of the cover and then the choice of wording for the actual title.
So the cover, that's all the art department at Mindy's Book Studio. Um, I gave them some um, I gave them some inspiration of other book covers that I liked. Um, and from there, the art department put together just a couple of like cover comps of like, this is sort of what we think it might look like. And I was able to give some notes, but I mean, it was nothing big. Like, this is still pretty much the cover. They sent me the coloring's a little different. The original one was a little lighter. Um, I think I asked for the rain. The original one didn't have the rain. That was on a different comp cover. And I was like, can we take the rain from this cover and put it on this cover? And they liked that idea. But most of it was them. They read the book and they pulled some themes out of it and was like, we think this is a good and I love it because I love like the kind of shadowy figure. I love the water. I love the rain. I love the very 80s coloring. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's very, very representative of the book. And then the title actually came very late in the process. It didn't, this book was just called The Time Travel Book on my computer for years until I was almost done writing it and I got ready to turn it into my agent. And I thought to myself, I cannot send it to her with the time travel book because the first thing that she's going to ask me is, okay, titles. We can't send it out to editors as the time travel book. We need to, come up with a better title so that they're enticed by it. And so for the first thing I did was look through the book and see, is there any phrases in here that jump out to me and no, nothing was really like feeling title worthy. And so I was just procrastinating. Actually, I was on Twitter and I saw another author, Eric Smith, who was tweeting about how he had retitled his most recent book, and the new title he gave it was called "You Can Go Your Own Way," and from the song, and how he really thought the song worked for his book. And I was like, oh, song lyrics would be great because I've got this 80s book. I should look at 80s songs that would have been on the radio when this, because that will immediately, like, for people that were alive during that era or are familiar with 80s music, immediately evoke the time period and the sense of place. And so I pulled up the list of the top 100 radio singles for 1985 and was just going through them and going, which of these songs like kind of ping something in my brain of like, oh, maybe that. And whenever something did seem maybe right, I'd go look up the lyrics and refresh my mind of exactly what's the song about. And this is one that, the song is I Melt With You by Modern English. And I was thinking, oh, maybe. And I looked at the lyrics and I went, actually, I think this is really, really indicative of the themes of the book. And so I put that title on it. And then there is now a scene in the book where the characters are discussing this song as it plays on the radio. It came out in 83, but it was still on the radio in 85. And that was actually written during the editing process because I was writing it just to try to like convince my editing team that this was the best title for the book. And because, we always have to brainstorm titles to make sure you've got the very best one. And so I decided that I was going to help make my case by writing a whole scene where they're discussing the title without actually mentioning the title, because of whole copyright issues for books.
Yeah.
Put the lyrics in the book. And so, but I was like, hey, it's a popular enough song. I think I can work around it. And so I wrote a whole scene of them discussing it to try to sell my title for the book. And then I was like, also, can we actually put the scene in the book? Because now that I've written it, I really want it in the book. So now it's actually in there. But it came well into, title was very much like one of the last pieces to fall into place.
That is so cool. You're talking about that time period and so many incredible songs. Take on Me and Don't You Forget About Me. Some Like It Hot, The Power of Love, Broken Wings. These are just a few of the songs that were really popular in 85 on the top list.
Power of Love written for Back to the Future.
Right. Yeah. Lots of inspiration to definitely pull from. The book itself, too, again, it really is a page turner. When you do start reading it, you can't put it down. And when I read the PDF that was sent, it was the same thing. I read it actually twice. First time it's fresh. The second time you pick up little nuggets you might have missed the first time you read it. And I love, like you say, the multiple perspectives from the cast. They're all diverse characters, which is great. And the story does center on two teens from two different times who work together to stop a murder that hasn't happened yet. And you talk about Mindy's book studio. This is the first debut to be released by Mindy's book studio, which is fantastic. And she expressed that she fell in love with the book because it's fun and entertaining, and at the same time makes the reader think about fate, the nature of existence, the power of forgiveness, and even second chances. Tell us about that.
I mean, those are the things that I love, stories that make me think and ask questions but don't necessarily provide answers. I love And especially in kind of time travel, I really like when I come away like wondering about possibilities and if things had gone a different way. I think time travel stories really uniquely lend themselves to um, that idea of what if. Um, what if things had just been a little bit different? Um, because so many of them deal with that sort of butterfly effect of, one little thing changing a big thing. And so I thought like not what better way to play with those ideas than to put it like in a time travel story than to also have this like high stakes mystery that they're trying to solve and they're constantly wondering like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the thing that's going to help me succeed or make me fail? And again, I think those are really universal questions that we all wrestle with going through life of am is this thing that I just did, was that the right decision? Am I going to regret this down the line? Is this going to affect other people? Um, and so, I mean, the things that she pulled out of it are the things that I found most interesting that I was trying to put into it. So I'm glad that that's what what her takeaway was and what spoke to her was because those are the ideas that are always most interesting to me.
Well said. And when you think about time travel, do you have a preference, just even for yourself? Do you like to go ahead or do you like to go back in time? Is there one way that you lean more?
I tend to I mean, personally, I don't know that I'd want to try and time travel either direction, but I tend to really enjoy. I get, I think, more swept up in the stories that go back, um, just because since we don't know what the future looks like, that winds up almost feeling a little more fantasy
Yeah.
than to me than that whole like kind of what if something was just a little different. But that's it. I mean, I still have really enjoyed plenty of futuristic time travel stories too, but I do think that I tend to get a little more drawn to the going backwards.
Who
Because
is
who
the
among us hasn't thought about what if I could have done something differently? What would that look like?
Yes, exactly. Who is the book designed for? Do you have or did you have a reader in mind when you penned this novel, or is it anybody who reads it will get something from it?
I mean, I always hope anybody, but again, it feels a little trite because it's like what every writer wants to say, but honestly, the reader was me. Um, because my other books I was trying to write to an audience. This one I was writing for me. And then what obviously by the time when I was revising it and I was thinking, actually, I will give this to my agent and like to try to sell. And I still kind of thought I was like, and then it won't sell because this book is too weird. And I only wrote it for me. I was trying to think in terms of like, okay, would this like what would be a turn off? But um I think it's for I mean, it's there are people that I think the book is not for. Like people that don't want to read about teenagers are obviously not going to be the ideal market, even though I don't think it is a YA book in the traditional sense, and that I don't think it is ideally the primary market is teenagers. I think it's mostly for people who really are still very well in touch with their teenage selves, but have maybe moved a little beyond that. Doesn't
Mm,
have to be, parents of teenagers which is what I am, is the parent of teenagers, but someone who's gotten a little bit more of that perspective that you can look back and see the adult points of view in the book and relate to both. Um, is probably the ideal, which is where I was when I was writing it. But that said, I mean, my oldest daughter read it and she really loved it and then like pitched it to all her teachers at school. So, I think it definitely can be for teenagers, and she obviously related mostly to the teens. And I've had adults read it that um, and some have said that they related mostly to the teens. Some have said they related mostly to the adults. Some
right,
have
that's
said
what
they just
happens.
related to everyone. Um, so I think it can be for anyone, but I think it needs to be someone that really likes to consider kind of what other people are going through.
Right. This sort of that emotional intelligence in a way,
Mhm,
empathy, and understanding the plight of
mhm,
others. And we talk a lot about that on the show, actually, empathy, kindness, things of that nature,
mhm.
positivity, which I think is great. So there is an underlying message in the book for the reader.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I don't ever wanna write things that it, like, bangs you over the head with, like, "This is the moral of
Right.
the story,"
It's
like,
not
it's not an after
preachy.
school special where it's like, "This is clearly the point I'm trying to get you to take away," but it's more I wanna provoke questions. I want readers to think about, "What would I do in this situation? How would it feel to be in this situation?" "Could this have been me under different circumstances?" Um, and so I try to introduce a lot of those sorts of elements of characters working through, here are my circumstances, how do I navigate them? Um, and so I think it does involve a need to be a little willing to consider experiences outside. And again, when you have multiple narrators, you kind of need the reader to be able to put themselves in multiple people's shoes and not just one, and go, okay, like, even if I don't agree with this, is it understandable? Like, can I see why this character did what they did? And because that's always a question that I like to ask when I'm, you know, taking in a story in whatever media is like, are these characters' actions, like, can I track them? Do
Mm,
they make sense for who that person is in the circumstances they are in? Um, and what what could have been different here? What other decisions could have been made? Um, and so I think as long as someone's willing to go in a little open-minded and ask themselves those sorts of questions,
yeah.
I think the biggest things I'd want to take away are just, first of all, what I mean, I think a big question that I was, what might my life have been like if circumstances were just a little bit different? Like, who would I have been? Because I think a lot of people, I think that's a necessary part of empathy is being able to see, I could have gone very differently had circumstances been just a little bit different. If just small changes had been made early, but at these pivotal times,
Hmm.
I might have turned out completely differently, and let that kind of promote empathy for other people that are in different circumstances and go, well, how did they get there? Um, and could that have been me under different circumstances? And then also just general, compassion for others that I think comes from that, and seeing, wow, you don't really know what other people are dealing with, what's going on. Like, a big theme in the book is how people present to the world versus what they're dealing with inside.
You're real, right?
And
Exactly. Yeah.
and also, like, there are some characters that make some really, really bad choices, and not saying, well, that makes those choices okay. Like, those choices are still very much not okay, but you can see what led them there. And so, okay, so the real issue, like, yes, there's still no actual excusing, but there is understanding and trying to, like, get to that compassionate place where you can go, all right, you can do things I really, really think are the wrong choice. But what circumstances lead to people making those choices, and how can we address those circumstances so that, people aren't put in those situations?
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm speaking somewhat broadly here so as to avoid, like, spoilers. But,
Right, right. Without giving it all away. Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
but that is, like, one of the things that I would hope that readers might come away, like, wondering about. Is like, "Oh, I wish someone had just picked up on this earlier. I wish someone had just reached out to this character. How might
Mm-hmm.
things have been different?" And then maybe think of that in terms of, like, how we deal with people in real life.
Exactly. I want to give people a little bit more of a background of this great book. Again, I encourage you to get it. It's available, everywhere books are sold, and now at Target too. I mean, how cool was that? We dug that out just because it's such a cool photo. You're like, there I am on the shelves of Target. I bet your kids probably excited about that. It's a Target as well. I mean, that must have been a cool feeling, huh?
Yeah, I
Excuse
mean,
me, I
it's
mean Target.
my children don't let me say that. They're like, "Mom, no." Um, no, it's neat. It's hard now to like a lot of bookstores, are very curated now. So not every bookstore is going to carry every book.
Right.
And so um I didn't really know which stores were going to carry it. Figured like my local indies that support
Yeah.
me, that I have a personal relationship. I was like, well, they'll probably carry a couple copies. But I can't speak for any others because you can't fit every book. And
Yeah.
so when I found out that Target was going to carry it and it was going to
Mm,
be, in that book section in all their stores, that was
incredible.
really, really exciting because I was like, now there's a place I know because I actually didn't do the launch day thing of going in to see my book on shelf because I didn't want to be disappointed by it not being there.
Right.
So, um, but I went when I found out it was in Target. I was like, okay, now I know it's going to be. And Target, you can actually check online to see if it's in stock. So I made sure that there
Cool.
were some available at my local store, so I could go in and actually see it on a shelf, and that was really exciting.
Congrats on that. Trapped in a dead end town, Justin Warren has had his life defined by the suspicious deaths of his grandparents. The unsolved crime happened long before Justin was born, but those ripple effects are still felt after 38 years. Justin always knew he wouldn't have much of a future. He just never imagined that his life might take him backward. In the cosmic twist of fate, Justin's choices send him crashing into the path of determined optimist Rose Yen. Justin and Rose live in the same town and attend the same school, but have never met because Rose lives in 1985. Justin won't be born for another 20 years, and his grandparents are still alive for now. And in a series of events that reverberate through multiple lifetimes, Justin and Rose have a week to get Justin unstuck in time and put each of them in control of their futures by solving a murder that hasn't even happened yet. Available in hardcover, paperback, ebook, audiobook as well. And Mindy did the original introduction. The audiobook, did you do the audiobook or were there people brought in to do it?
No, no, I didn't. They actually cast a full cast of voice actors, 9 different voice actors, for the audiobook, and they do a wonderful, wonderful job. Um, I I'm actually not finished listening to the audiobook yet. I'm about halfway through. I've been like listening to it in little pieces. Um, but I got to listen to all their auditions and, sign off on all of them. But I was just blown away by all of them. I had very, very few notes, and what tiny notes I did have, they absolutely took to heart, and they did a wonderful, wonderful job with it. There have been so many times where I paused the audiobook and I went and like told my husband, I was like, have you gotten to this section? Have you listened to how like this actor does this character? Like it's so, so good.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah, it's wonderful. I love audiobooks. That's my main way of reading now is audiobooks.
Yeah.
Um, and so when I found out that I was getting a full cast of voice actors, that was maybe the most exciting part of this whole process for me was the audio.
So, how many books previous to this that you've penned?
Um, Entirely, I think 4.
Mm.
That I've written all the way through, and then a few more that I've started but have not fully finished yet.
So you have several in the works, huh? There's more coming from Lauren.
Yeah, yeah, there will eventually be more books on shelves by me. Right now, these are just books that are on my computer.
Well, that's what happens. It's like screenplays or whatever. You've got.
Oh, yeah.
How are you inspired? I've had guests who've come on who've said a lot of times they're inspired just by everyday living, things that they
Mhm.
see, things that they feel, things that they witness, and that sort of goes in here, and then they call upon it, when they are working on the material, or sometimes there are riveting things going on in their lives that they will then sort of document, or at least they'll get right to that computer and start writing whatever it is right away. What happens to you in terms of how you're inspired? And are you also a late night when the house is quiet and everybody's in bed type writer? Or can you write during the craziness of the day when the phone's ringing and the UPS guy's knocking on the door and there's emails to respond to? How does it work? What's your process like?
Well, there's always gonna be distractions. If I had if I had just all things considered, and I could write at any time I'd want to, I would be a late at night writer. I'd probably start at like 8 and write until like midnight or 1 a.m. or something like that. But I can't do that because I have a family and I want to spend time with my family. So I the time I have to work is while my kids are in school. Which my brain is very much not wanting to create first thing in the morning. So normally I'll try to do my card sort of like chore sort of stuff first thing in the morning after the kids go to school. That's when we deal with the yard and the email and the dogs and the errands and all of those things. And I normally won't even try to start writing until after lunch, after my brain's woken up a little bit more. If I have a chunk of time in the afternoon or later, I will always try to seize that because that's the time I'm most creative and can write the fastest and I think the best. I have the least amount of edits to do the later in the day I can push my writing time. But it's just not very often that I can do that. Today is actually one of the rare days I can. There, what I was like, I'm not even going to write until after we do this conversation, because I do have a chunk of time this afternoon. So I'm very excited about that. But and then as far as inspiration goes, I mean, yeah, everywhere. I think probably if you were to go back all of my manuscripts, you could probably tell what was important to me in my life at that point in time because it's probably in there. I mean, I do work in a lot of, not a one-to-one thing, but just sort of what's on my mind a lot at the time is what I will find a way to work in, be that, you know, more of a philosophical thing, or if it's like a current event that's getting a lot of play in my mind, I might find a way to, like in the news, I might find a way to work something around that in, um, or I mentioned earlier that I now am like, well, I have to write dogs in because dogs are now such a big part of my my life.
Yes.
We always had a dog, but we got these two dogs that we have now within the last couple of years, and we also now foster dogs. We always have dogs around, and so that's a thing that's now in there. And I mean, I will pull from books I've read. I will pull from movies I've watched. I don't think I have ever read a book where I have not at some point during the process of reading that book, I mean, since I've been writing, had some sort of idea of, oh, you know what, I need to change this about the thing I'm currently writing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's normally not like, oh, I need to take this thing out of this book and put it into this book. It's more like one of the last books I wrote was a rom-com, and the characters had this very dramatic meeting in chapter 1, and that made me realize that I could move a dramatic thing in the book I'm currently working on to chapter 1. And I was like, oh, I don't have to have all that build up to it. I can just put it right in chapter 1. And it's very different circumstances, but like it's because I read that book that thought occurred to me. Oh, I can put that there. And that happens every time I read anything. It happens every time I watch a show or watch a movie. Either there's something in there that I love that I'm like, oh, how can I work this into what I'm doing? Or there's something in there I really don't like that I'm like, oh, how can I make sure to never do that? Um,
Right.
so, I mean, yeah, really, it's inspiration. Like I breathe it in all day, every day.
Why do you love doing this work? What are some of the blessings and joys in your life that keep you moving forward and creating material like this for all of us to enjoy, Lauren?
I mean, as I said, just on a personal, like kind of hobby level, it's just like I've always loved stories. I've always loved to read. I've always loved TV and movies. And so the idea of creating that and being able to kind of live in that place where I get to analyze stories is just very personally fulfilling. And then just as a career, as a thing I'm putting out into the world, um, I think that reading broadly, like reading diversely, watching media from a whole bunch of different genres by a whole bunch of different types of artists from many different places, from many walks of life. I think that's been maybe one of the single best things I've ever done just for my own mind, um, to really challenge me and introduce me to new concepts, new information, new perspectives. um, and kind of challenge me to think outside of my own, like, 4 walls. Um, and so I feel like books and art is hugely important for challenging people to think and think critically and think compassionately. And I don't think that any one author or any one story is going to be the thing that, you know, changes someone's whole life. But just like with me, I could never pinpoint just one thing. It was just a collection of many things that I needed to read or watch or hear at the right point in my life. And I'm just hoping that the things I put into the world can be that for someone, can be that one little piece of the pinball machine that hits it just right so that it sends it off at just the
Mhm.
right angle. And it's not going to be for everyone, but um, if it's for anyone, then that's meaningful.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I really appreciate your, taking the time to share it in that way because I think it resonates with others and others who might be inspired by the story, and to see that you've been able to do it and stuck with it, and they might be young budding writers themselves,
Mhm.
and being inspired by this conversation on many different levels, which I think is great. The book, again, as I mentioned, the fanfare has been extraordinary. How does it feel to get all of this kind of commentary from so many people? I mean, even other USA Today and New York Times best-selling authors and so much more are hailing "I'll Stop the World."
I mean, it feels lovely, it feels a little surreal,
Yeah.
I mean, but right now, if you go on the internet, like, there's always another comment that's gonna keep you humble, so, I mean, for everyone that's like, "This is brilliant, I loved it," there's someone else who's like, "This was stupid, and I hated it." So, it's always like, "Well, okay, okay, feet firmly planted on the ground," um,
Yes.
but it is very, encouraging to know that this book that I wrote, mostly just for me, is actually also for other people.
Right, and sometimes that's what happens when you release it to the world and just let it
Mhm,
flow, the energy flow. Beautiful things happen as a result, and we're
mhm.
so happy that you did that. And we're going to look forward to more material from you, Lauren. This was really
Thank you.
fantastic. I want to encourage folks to check out her website as well. There it is,
Oh, it's
laurenThoman.com.
actually LaurenThomanWrites.com.
Oh, that's right. You got rights there. Okay, so we'll add that in. So if you've been seeing the .com there, add in the word rights,
Mhm,
WRITES, right?
mhm.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's perfect. And then you keep that updated, right?
I do, yes.
That's
So,
fantastic.
and
Yeah.
I'll yeah, so when there's new things that it should be there.
Let's update that for everybody. There it
There it
is.
is.
So LaurenThomanWrites.com. So if you saw this earlier as Lauren Thoman, probably if you just type in her name, it'll bring you right to everything anyway. But we're going to add in the word rights. There it is. Now it's right. And this was terrific. Really, thanks for all of the time. This was really a great conversation, Lauren. And again, the book, Target, Amazon, wherever books are sold, wherever are available. And congratulations on it. I know it's been a labor of love for you on
Thank you so much.
so many different levels, personally and professionally, right?
Mhm, mhm. Very,
Good
very
stuff.
much so.
Well, I enjoyed the time. I know our viewers have as well. They've been very active commenting throughout the show. We thank them too. We're going to keep the porch light on for you. You are welcome back to join us anytime, Lauren. And I
Thank
hope the
you.
show met whatever expectations you had and you enjoyed the time with me as much as I absolutely have with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
You're very welcome. Spread the word about the Jim Masters show, and we'll chat again soon, my friend. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You be well. Take care now.
You too. All right.
Cheers. All right. So there it is, folks. Lauren Thoman writes. Earlier, we just had the name, but I think if you just type in her name, which we did as well, you'll see a lot of things pop up. She's a prolific writer and a great spirit, very passionate about life, and she's doing great work. You're going to love that book. It really, again, I read it twice. I was sent a PDF copy of it, and it was really, really cool to read. It does take you back in time. We appreciate Lauren for stopping by. The name of the book is "I'll Stop the World." And again, you can find it where books are sold, and it is available at Target, as we mentioned earlier. And again, we want to show this website again. This is her website. The book, again, you can get at Target and Amazon and everywhere else, Barnes and Noble. But if you wanted to just peruse her website and other things that she's doing, there it is there, Lauren Thoman Writes. .com. How cool was this, everybody? Thanks for your participation and being with us here on the show. I'm your host, Jim Masters. You guys know we don't say goodbye around here. We say see you later. Ciao, cheers, shalom, slancha, Avida Zane. We say hasta la vista. We say cheerio. We say moi loop. Take care. Be well. We appreciate you being here. If you enjoyed this episode, there's something special you can do that we absolutely enjoy and love and helps us continue to grow. Give this episode a thumbs up. There's a thumbs up, thumbs up icon right next to this episode. Leave a comment, drop a comment in the comments section for us as well. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Jim Masters TV, where there are hundreds and hundreds of episodes of our series that you can watch, you can binge, you can enjoy, and you can celebrate. Yeah, from all different backgrounds and so much more on the Jim Masters Show. So again, Lauren joining us here. We thank her, coming to us from Nashville. Wherever you're watching from around the world, thanks for making us a part of your day, your evening, your morning, whatever time of day it is when you watch our shows, because we realize we have an international audience from all around the world. We appreciate you being with us. And stop by. We always have a good time here on the show. I'm always here, doing what we can to connect and inspire and just have a good time with all of you and you and you and you. Thanks for all the great comments, all of the enthusiasm, and we appreciate you being with us. I'm Jim Masters, your host, thanking you for your time this time. Till next time, right here on the Jim Masters Show live series. Take care and be well. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.